Tonight our guest is Dr. Adrian Krieg, and he wrote this eye-opening book called July 4th, 2016, The Last Independence Day. That's an ominous title. What is this book about?
Well, the book is about what I perceive to be the end of the Republic as we understand it of the United States of America.
The Republic.
Yes, America is a republic, you know, it's not a democracy.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, I can tell you an interesting story about that. Last week, I had an instance. I was watching a local television channel in New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. And my power utility provider is the New Hampshire Electric Co-op, and they ran an ad. And they said people should go and vote to preserve the democracy. So I called up the co-op and I said, gentlemen, I said, America is not a democracy, it's a republic. And the gentleman said, well, the Secretary of State of New Hampshire prepared the ad.
Wow.
So we called the Secretary of State of New Hampshire and he says, I know. He says, I know, we're pulling the ad. He says, we've had 6 other calls already.
But the average person today would say we have a democracy. What is a republic? What makes up a republic?
The difference is very, very important. Actually, we have what is called a constitutional republic. Mm-hmm. In a constitutional republic, there are a set and basis of laws which determine how society behaves. In our case, that's the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence. They're the founding documents and they're the laws by which we govern the country. Mm-hmm. So government can't come along and just change the rules or make new rules. They have to stick with the rules that we have. In a democracy, which is a very, very, very bad form of government, the rule of law is based on the norms of the society at that particular time in time frame. So today we say, well, okay, abortion's okay, and tomorrow we'll say euthanasia is okay, and the day after that we'll say, well, it's okay to kill that guy because we don't really like him. That would be a democracy where you're allowed to change the laws every day simply based on what the majority thinks.
So, so the majority rules.
Yes, but the majority rules without an anchor.
Okay. So is this a democracy within a republic, maybe, or is that wrong too?
No, that's wrong too. We're simply a constitutional republic. That's how the country was set up. As a matter of fact, Benjamin Franklin was asked when he came out of the Constitutional Convention. He was asked, what have you brought forth, sir? Mm-hmm. And he said, a republic, if you can keep it, madam.
Did he think we could keep it?
I think there were always doubts with Franklin, Jefferson, Jay, all of them.
So they gave us that challenge to keep the republic. But I know when I was in school, I was taught we had a democracy.
Very unfortunately, most teachers believe that. They think it is a democracy, and it's not. They should look it up in a dictionary, and preferably Black's Law Dictionary. They could also look up republic while they're doing that.
And that's right. And when we say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, it's to the United States.
To the republic,
republic
for which it stands, yes.
The democracy isn't there.
No.
And does democracy come up in the Constitution at all?
No.
It never comes up?
No, it doesn't come up at all.
What else don't we know about? I mean, that's a pretty eye-opening thing that we have a republic.
Well, we have absolutely, the average American has no idea whatsoever who's running the country and to what ends. We met at a talk that I gave in New Hampshire, and my first statement, one of my very introducing statements in my talk was that if anyone here believes that the president's running this country, they should leave the room because they're not going to like the rest of this talk. the president of this country doesn't run the country at all. He doesn't run anything.
Who runs it?
Indirectly, there are a number of organizations that run the country by committee, and that's the Council of Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission in the United States. In Europe, it's run by the Bilderbergers. These are organizational structures which have run our country for a very long time.
When do they start? Not during Benjamin Franklin's days.
No, not at all. I think the real power of the Council on Foreign Relations came under FDR. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was a socialist, if not a communist. And he...
Now, I think a lot of people would object to that.
Well, I'm sure they would, but it is a fact. If you look at the types of things he instituted, Social Security, all of the various programs that he instituted. In fact, people credit Roosevelt, especially Democrats, credit Roosevelt with ending the Depression. He had nothing to do with the end of the Depression. The Depression was ended by the Second World War.
So why did he institute all those policies? And what gave him the right to do that?
Well, what he did, actually, he surrendered the right of leadership over the State Department to the Council on Foreign Relations.
How could he do that?
By simply appointing only people from the Council on Foreign Relations to cabinet positions, to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And since FDR was president, from that time to the present, 96 to 98% of all Joint Chiefs of Staff, all members of the cabinet, most members in the administration of the presidents have all been CFR members.
Now, what does CFR do?
The Council on Foreign Relations runs a series of committees, and these committees structure policy. And since they hold most of the positions in the State Department, or the anchor positions in the State Department, that policy is then dragged into the State Department. They publish a quarterly thing called, I think it's called Current Affairs, is it? I think so. And it's a, it's quarterly, it's 300 or 400 pages, and they're all policy statements by Council on Foreign Relations individuals, saying what we're going to be doing in the future. The Council on Foreign Relations is an offshoot of the Royal Institute of International Affairs in London, who had been doing exactly the same thing and running things in England for a very, very long time.
So are only Americans on this
Yes, the Council on Foreign Relations is exclusively American. The Trilateral Commission, trilateral meaning both sides of the Atlantic and the Pacific Rim nations, however, very much smaller. The Council on Foreign Relations has about 3,200 to 3,400 members. The Trilateral Commission, I believe now, is probably somewhere about 340 or 350 members. The Bilderbergers, which are a very, very secretive organization, no one really knows how many members.
When you say secretive, why are they secretive?
The Bilderbergers are sort of, I look at them as pretty nasty people. They were founded in Holland. Prince Bernhard was the first head of the Bilderbergers, and I don't know if people know about history. He's a very colorful person. During the Second World War, he was an SS officer with the Nazis, and he was the prince, he was the Queen's son of Holland. So this didn't sit very well with many of the Dutch people, obviously. And he's been involved in tremendous scandals, kickbacks in military contracts and all sorts of things since then.
Are you saying, though, excuse me for interrupting, is that these organizations, the Trilateral Commission, CFR, the Bilderberg, Are they making policy for our country?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Have they changed it from being a republic to a democracy?
Absolutely.
They did.
Oh, sure.
And that's why everyone believes we have a democracy because of these organizations?
Sure.
Is this still
look,
propaganda?
look,
I mean,
no, look. The president issues something called executive orders. We hear about them all the time.
is that in the Constitution?
First of all, Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution prohibits the executive branch of government from making law, period.
Okay.
Only the legislative branch is allowed to make law. That's number one.
I learned that in school.
Right.
Okay.
Number two, the words executive order do not appear in the Constitution.
So how
They're
does-
absolutely illegal. There is no basis in law for a president giving an executive order.
does executive order become law?
The way they've structured it is if a president makes an executive order, it's published in the, what is that, the Federal
Register?
Federal Register. And if there is no objection within a certain number of days, I don't remember the number of days, it becomes law. And of course, that's wrong because that obviates the legislative branch of government. But with a bunch of wimps we elect into Congress who haven't any courage whatsoever, they won't do anything about it. I mean, what they should be doing is saying, wait a minute, Mr. President, you're not allowed to do that. We're not having it.
And you're saying that these, the trilateral commissions, they put pressure on the president to make these executive orders? Is that how they control? They do?
Yeah, oh, sure. And they also, you know, there's also many members of Congress and the Senate, other Council of Foreign Relations members. You know, when you have an organization who is so rooted in the management, and that's what the executive branch does, it manages the government. And when these people are so well rooted in this, well, you know, they sort of make policy
To their advantage.
to the ends that they desire. And then the ends that they desire is the New World Order. We had President Bush, previous President Bush, tell us about the 1,000 points of light and, you know.
So what is this New World Order? And what does that have to do with the Republic and a democracy and the Trilateral Commission?
It's a difficult question to answer because I think that right now we have a presidential campaign running.
Yes.
How corrupt is this country when in Mexico they allow 5 political parties into a debate and we allow 2 political parties into the debate?
Pretty bad. They wouldn't even let Ralph Nader go in and sit on it.
They wouldn't. I don't like Nader, but and I don't like Bush,
But at
and
least
I don't like Gore.
Oh, right.
But this is not a debate. This is a practical joke.
That's right.
It really is.
And you believe that these committees are controlling the Republican Party and the Democratic Party?
Look at it this way. The Federal Election Commission and the Presidential Commission on the debates, I can't remember. It's just a 3-letter, you know, it's one of them alphabet soup type things.
Okay.
In any way, Budweiser comes in and gives them a few $100,000. At the same time, Budweiser gives a few $100,000 to the Republicans and the Democrats. Budweiser can't lose, can they? I mean, they can't
Because
lose.
they're supporting both parties.
They're
right.
supporting. The big business interests in this country control the debate from A to Z. They pay off the Republicans, they pay off the Democrats, they staff the Federal Election Commission with 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats, they keep everybody else out of the picture. It's a travesty.
Okay, so how is this affecting the average person?
Well, the average person doesn't get to hear the issues. Did Gore or Bush talk about NAFTA? Did they talk about the death penalty? What did they talk about? They talked about rubbish. They talked back and forth. They agreed on everything. I mean, it was a joke. If you're talking about international trade, both Bush and Gore have exactly the same identical party. They like NAFTA. They want to expand NAFTA to FTAA. And for those people who don't know what FTAA is the Free Trade Area of the Americas. It is the follow-up treaty to NAFTA. It is to expand NAFTA to 34 nations of South America and the Caribbean Basin. We're talking about nations like Haiti, which have an average annual income of $385. Now, can you tell me how the hell is an American manufacturer, American worker, going to compete with somebody that's making $385 a year?
So that's what the average person needs to worry about.
That is definitely what they need to
Taking the
worry.
economy outside the United States.
Maine was one of the major places where shoes were made, isn't it?
Yes, it was.
The last shoe factory just closed up. They moved it down to Mexico. That was last year. They're all gone. New Hampshire had a fantastic textile industry, all gone. What they're doing is they're deindustrializing America, and they're telling us, look, guys, we're changing. We're changing from a manufacturing-based society into an information-based society. What utter rubbish. Can you build a house out of information? Can you build a car out of information? It's absolute rubbish. A country that ceases to have a manufacturing base becomes a colony of the country who has a manufacturing base. That's what the Revolutionary War was about with England. England had a manufacturing base, and they instituted laws that disallowed Americans to produce steel, iron. They weren't allowed to produce gunpowder because the British industry wanted to sell it here.
And so they're doing the exact same thing right now.
The war of northern aggression.
Okay, the Civil War.
which you guys called a civil war.
Yeah.
It's the war of northern aggression.
Okay.
Because it wasn't a civil war, was about trade. It had nothing whatsoever to do with slavery. It was a war about trade. What started the War of Northern Aggression? A blockade by the northern states to prevent the southern states from trading with England. It's in every history book. That's what we did. We blockaded the South because their principal customer for cotton was England. Manufactured goods from England were cheaper and better made. And the guys in the North didn't like that.
So it all comes down to economics.
Economics and money. Follow the money.
What can you tell me about the money system in this country?
We have today what is called fiat money.
And what does that mean?
Fiat means that it's paper money and it's not backed by anything. The United States has a banking system very similar to the Deutsche Bank in Germany and to the British Bank, and we call it the Federal Reserve System. It's not federal, it's not a reserve, and it's not a system.
So the government doesn't own the Federal Reserve?
No, it's a private banking consortium. 53% of it belongs to New York banks. The rest belongs to I believe it's 36 Federal Reserve banks throughout the nation. And
so the bankers run this country?
For people who are, yes, for people who are over 60, they will be able to remember that we used to have silver certificates. We had paper money, and it was a silver certificate. And if you went into a bank, you could give it to the banker and say, here's $1, I want a silver dollar, and they would give you a silver dollar.
So it looked just like the dollar bills we have today?
Well, a little bit. It was a little bit different. It had some different colors and different things.
But basically, you would recognize it, except for it would say silver certificate.
And we had gold certificate. That was a $20 gold certificate. You took the $20 gold certificate, you went in and said, I'd like a $20 gold eagle.
So was this like 100 years ago?
Oh, no. Silver was still commonly used in the late 50s.
So in the late 50s, I could take a $5 bill and get...
$5 silver.
I could?
Oh, yes.
Wow.
What could you get with it today?
A $5 bill? That would give me nothing.
A $5 bill would buy you $1 silver.
Oh, wow. So inflation.
Inflation.
Is even,
And inflation is caused by government, nobody else. Government and bankers create inflation. This ludicrous thing that you hear on television when you listen to a program where somebody says, well, you know, the prices went up, it's inflation, it's the oil companies, they're driving the prices up. It's ridiculous. The oil companies don't control the currency, the bankers do. And they make money with inflation. Bankers make money in two ways, with inflation and by loaning government money, which we call the national debt. The whole thing is such a corrupt Ponzi scheme. Bankers actually create money out of nothing. If you go to a bank and you deposit $100, the bank takes your money and says, we got $100, and in their credit sheet they write, we have assets of $100. They don't have assets of $100, they got your $100.
That's right.
Then they say, we got her $100. Fred the cameraman wants to borrow $90. We'll loan him the $90 that she gave us, right? And you got $90, right? And you know what? They got another credit because he owes them $90. So they just made $190 worth of credit out of something they don't own.
It's a pretty good deal.
Isn't it wonderful?
Yes.
If a businessman did that, he'd go to jail.
So why do we get off the gold standard or the silver? Why don't we have gold backing and silver backing anymore? Why do we have this
Because
fiat
of
money?
inflation. The rate of inflation is astounding, and what's more astounding is the fact that the standard of living in America has been dropping since the 1950s. I came to America in 1952. We had a nice little house. My mother didn't work. We had a car. My father started a little business. We lived very well. And in the 1950s, you bought a Chevrolet Corvette. Well, when they came out, I think it was 61 or 62 when they came out, for $3,400. What's a Corvette cost today?
Oh, God, I don't know, 34,000 maybe?
34,000. But what's really interesting is when you do a comparison, now anybody who's listening can do this.
Okay.
Get a newspaper from like the 1930s and compare what people were earning and what things cost. A house cost $10,000. A car cost $600 to $1,000. How much were they earning a year? Now, what's interesting is that they could buy, with their annual earnings, 4 cars.
Oh, wow.
Huh?
Pretty good.
With their annual earnings, every other year they would have enough money to buy a house. But what happened today? Today you can't do that. Today it costs you more than a year's wages just to buy a car.
That's right. That's
You see?
right.
And that demonstrates how our standard of living is dropping.
And it's dropping because of these organizations are creating policies to drain more money from us?
Sure.
They create the inflation, so we have to work harder and give them more of our money?
Sure. And they make more money off of us because the government borrows more money, and the interest rates are astronomical. You know, I mean, think of it. Of all the taxes collected by government, what percentage goes toward paying off the national debt? It's almost 40%.
40%, wow.
That's the bankers. They're putting it in their pocket.
That's
And then we have these disingenuous politicians running around telling us we don't have a national debt and we're running a surplus. What the hell are they talking about? Social Security, just Social Security by itself, has a $17 trillion debt.
Oh, wow.
That's all IOUs that these bums have been giving to Social Security. They take the money out of the Social Security fund and put it into the general fund, and they give them an IOU. But that's not all. They do it to the Highway Trust Fund. They do it to the Airport Trust Fund. They do it to the Patent Office. They take millions upon millions upon millions of dollars and give these people paper. And then these agencies have to beg and say, please, we don't have enough money to run our agency. Could we have a little more? And all the while, the bankers are raking it in from both sides.
Did we always have a central? That's called central banking.
No, we didn't.
Okay.
The first central bank was the Bank of the United States. It was destroyed by Andrew Jackson, one of the last really courageous American presidents. You know, he was a soldier, he was a tough cookie. There was a man named Biddle, and he ran the Bank of the United States. They had been given a franchise by the previous administration. And they operated pretty much like the Federal Reserve does today. And he said, these people are a bunch of hoodlums. We've given, he showed, actually, the way he destroyed them is very interesting. He showed where they were given the right to issue $17 million worth of currency. And they parlayed the $17 million through these phony schemes we were talking about before into $150 million.
Wow.
For that privilege, they were paying the United States Treasury $200,000 a year. Which is less than 1/10 of 1% of the money they were making.
So Andrew Jackson said that's not a very good deal?
He said it's a lousy deal.
And he got rid of them.
And he got rid of them, and it was very hard because Biddle had been brilliant. What he did is he loaned money to newspapers and congressmen, very large amounts of money.
So they were buying congressmen back then, too?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And then when Jackson said, I'm going to shut these guys down, these congressmen all got phone calls. Well, at that time, they got letters instead of phone calls. They said, we're going to call your loan. And Biddle almost bankrupted the United States.
Holy cow, wow.
Today,
and Congress helped him because Congress were in his hands.
They were,
Yeah.
yeah.
Which is exactly what's happening today.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's exactly, you know.
So Andrew Jackson got rid of the central bank, but it came back.
I think we have a thing here that you can. This was a leader in my first book, and it's a very interesting statement. You can read that.
I'll let you read it.
All right. Ezra Pound was a very interesting man. He was probably the greatest poet. American poet of the English language, and he was also very, very political. And he said, you will learn the answer to these questions, many questions, as Ezra Pound said, until you know who has lent what to whom, you know nothing whatsoever of politics or history.
Ah, excellent point. Yes, excellent.
You know, that... And I think that's very, very true. And I think this is one of the things that, particularly in our schools, is completely avoided by the educational institutions. They don't talk about money. And money is the driving force behind politics, behind wars. Economics cause wars. Wars are not caused over, I disagree with you, so I'm going to kill you. That's baloney. You've got a nice necklace, I want it. That's what causes the war.
So why don't the schools teach people about money and teach that this is a republic, not a democracy?
Because they're complicated issues. They're issues that frighten many people. The concept that there are organizations, which are some secret and some semi-secret, running our government, frightens many people. Other people who are in these organizations criticize that, and they say, oh, you're one of those kooks. You're one of those kooks with the conspiracy. Oh, that's baloney. Well, just think about this. These people say conspiracy, believing that there is a conspiracy within government is kooky. When you do something, anything, don't you plan it out?
Yes.
I mean, if you're in a business or you run a business, don't you have a business plan?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Doesn't even government have budgets?
Yes, they're supposed to.
Well, obviously, everybody does make plans. And if you have an organization like the Council on Foreign Relations with 3,400 people who have continuous meetings in New York City and Washington and at the UN all the time, they must be doing something. I mean, they're not having those meetings to play canasta.
So they're planning the economics of the world.
Yes.
And how the bankers can make even more money.
Sure. One of the heads of the is David Rockefeller of the Council of Foreign Relations.
David Rockefeller?
He was one of the original founders. He was the founder at his estate in Westchester County. Zbigniew Brzezinski suggested the foundation of the Trilateral Commission. And the Trilateral Commission was, all the founders were CFR members. And
It's a tangled web.
oh, sure it is. Sure it is. I mean, and you can follow. I mean, nobody can say that's kooky. These are all historic facts.
So what can people do about this? I mean, I'm listening to it. I'm totally overwhelmed. How can I understand all this? And there's so many figures, so many people. I mean, so what can I do about this? As an average person, what should I start doing about this?
I think you should start by being highly critical of an electoral process that excludes 4 political parties.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think you should insist that if they're going to do that, you're not going to vote for either one of them.
Or write in a vote.
Or write in a vote. Or do what, I mean, you should, unless American people wake up and fight against this oppression that is building.
That they don't even really know about. They're not aware.
Well, America, at this point, I think, could be considered an empire. We have troops in more countries than Rome did when Rome was, or Byzantine. We have troops in about 112 nations around the world. We tell people what to do everywhere. People hate us. People hate us. And why do they hate us? Because we're running around telling people what to do. It's none of our damn business. And we have these, we just had a ship attacked in the Middle East. Oh, it's a terrorist attack on our ship. I wonder why. I wonder why. We're lording it over people. We're telling them what to do. They're getting ticked off at us.
So what else can we do besides complain that we should have more than 2 people to vote for?
Well, I think there's a lot of things. I think one of the really responsible groups in this whole cabal are the media. The media are not objective. Mm-hmm. They're not fair. Middle East reporting in American media is a joke. I mean, I have to listen to German television or to Italian television to get any inkling of an idea of what's going on in the Middle East, because what you hear here is it's all a joke. It's all wrong.
But isn't that the same way? Because the bankers would be controlling the media. If they control the Congress people, they would control the media too.
The media is a animal unto itself. Journalists, by nature, as was proven in 1998 in numerous surveys, are almost exclusively Democrats. Almost, I think 96% of all media tend toward the spectrum of the left on the political side. The media is decidedly pro-Israel and anti-Arab. There's nothing wrong with that, but they're being unobjective. They're not reporting.
They're giving a slanted view.
Slanted view, and that's very bad. I think that when you have the people who are responsible for giving you information, twisting that information always in a certain direction, that's very bad. And I think we have to fight against that.
Well, we just have 2 more minutes left. What would you like our audience to remember? Or if there's one fact that they should remember from this show, what is it? Besides that, we are living in a republic, not a democracy, and I hope you all go and ask your history teachers about that tomorrow.
I would like, if I could, have people question what they hear on the news. Whenever a reporter gives you a story or gives you a leader or tells you something, think about, what is he telling me? Does he have an ulterior motive for telling me that? Does he want me to think in a specific way? What words did he use? And if everybody did that, their heads would be on a lot straighter.
And to be able to protect themselves more and their families and everything
That's
else.
right.
Well, thank you, Adrian. This was wonderful. This is Adrian's book, the Satori.
And the new Mandarins.
And the other one is July 4th, 2016, the last Independence Day. And I think if you don't start questioning the media and questioning your congressman and finding out about all this stuff Adrian's been talking about, you might find yourself in a pickle, maybe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.